Hey guys, welcome back to the second part of our Formula 1 car drawing video where we are tackling the line work. And this is a long one. Very long. You guys wanted this. This video is sponsored by Snacks. Snacks, the best snack you can get.
It's not sponsored, you can't say that.
Okay, here we go again, and as you can see I did some touch-ups on the previous sketch because it was pointed out to me on Instagram that I did mess up the proportion a little bit, so this side needed to be just a little bit thicker so it fits in with the drawing. So now that we have that, this is a separate layer, doesn't really matter, I'll bring it down to 30% and I'll bring down my actual sketch to 30% as well. Take a dark color and I'll take my sketching brush, which I like. I want to see what thickness is. Oh, new layer. We forgot about the new layer. So let's see if the thickness, I think the thickness is good for now. And then you can just go in and start following the lines that we have set up already. So I am going to not start with the wheel actually. I'm just going to start with parts that I like. For example, here we have the front wing. And I'm going to work on that. Now, the thing is, especially if you're working in Procreate, oh, I lost that line. If you're working in Procreate, what can happen is that you get too reliant on the edit shape function. So you will make sure that all your lines are super straight and super nice. And that's going to end up biting you a little bit in the butt just because your drawing is going to be much less dynamic than it should or could be, and you want to avoid that if possible. So as you can see here, I'm trying to do as many hand-drawn lines as I can. And that's a pretty good line, but it's a little bit, so sometimes I use it. It's really, you have to feel it out when it's useful to do this little trick and when it's better to just do your own lines. And there is no real trick to it. You just have to sort of, the more you draw, the more you will see that the percentage that you just drew, well, not that you drew, but the percentage of lines that are a bit stiff is too high for your taste. And then you know, okay, so I should have done more hand drawn. And you also see where the lines are a little bit too stiff, and that's like the perfect way of seeing, not perfect, but that's a good way of seeing where you should or could switch to a more drawn line. One thing here, so there is not such a big neck and neck there, so it's actually quite rounded there. So I'm a little bit debating if I want to do it like that, and I have not decided yet. So what you can do here is we can just test how that looks. So one side I'm going to do like that, and let me take away the underline. It looks nice. I think okay, let's redo it here just like that as well, because it does look a little bit better. So I'm just gonna, here we can use, let's see if we can do the arc a little bit. So it gives us a nice arc. Then I do the rest with hand. And then you can come in and just try to do some adjustments here and there. Oh, maybe make the eraser a bit smaller. And just touch it up. Like this is up to you if you want to go more towards the illustrated route or the industrial design sketching route. That's where you get these thicker or thinner lines. And I don't mean thicker and thinner, I mean like more illustrated lines, which in this case, especially for me, means I follow the line shortly. So I would draw something, just go along like this, but that's not really industrial design sketching style, and I like my drawings to be more industrial design sketchy. Once again, I am going to keep the drawing a little bit simpler, so I'm not gonna implement all the detail elements that should be there. Just because of this, actually this can be straight here. There we go. There's no reason to not do this with the tool. But returning to what I was saying, I'm going to do less details because otherwise this is going to be a 2-hour video of you guys just watching me draw lines. And also I will not be able to constantly talk for 2 hours. Well, I would be able, but nothing really meaningful that would help you out. In this case, like this little detail that I'm doing here is just a hinge. It doesn't really make any sense because it's not a hinge that is necessarily there, but I just want to add a little bit of detail. So now I am going to use this. Sometimes it's once again, I'm not saying never to use the smart tool option, but to use it smartly. There we go. So sort of we have a nice thickness for that one, and the same here. Edit shape arc. I think that always check what you did. That looks good for now. You might want to do less construction lines, but feel free to still do them because, as I said, you don't want to lose that industrial design sketchy feel if that's what you're going for. If you're not going for the Illustrator style, and as we agreed, I am not. So I am going to use those construction lines here and there. People really like seeing them. Reminder for the brush that I'm using, I made a video of how I constructed it, so you can check that out as well if you're interested. And now doing the side skirts. As you can see, I am rotating quite often just because I like to keep it comfortable for my hand, since you're doing the same lines over and over again, and I just want it to be as comfortable as possible because that's how you get the better quality lines out of it. Okay, and now we're adding a little bit of detail here in the back as well. It's up to you if you, so I like my cross-hatching, and my drawings are cross-hatch heavy, so it's especially this brush, it's sharper than the previous one, so we lose a little bit of that sharpness. So you might want to come back with a sketching brush and add that back in. We will see towards the end if it's a little bit too, not stale but stiff, and then we will do that. So now that we have this construction line here, I can actually also, since we have the tool, let's use it. So this would come something like this. I can take this little thing off there, and then the same thing here. Something like that. Here we go. And that is our cockpit. So I constantly check if things are okay. So far it looks good. The thing is, for a long while you will not see what exactly is happening here, so you do have to be patient. Our cockpit, I'm going to draw in the thickness there. Then we can draw in the ellipse. Thankfully, oh, it didn't draw an ellipse. It would be better. So if this happens, I would recommend just redrawing it, maybe going a little bit over, just so you're sure that you get an ellipse out of it, because then you have much better control over what you're doing. And of course, you can also make sure that the ellipse is correctly placed in space. So this is a bit big there. I'm trying to adjust it because I know that this looks pretty good. Yeah, I'll apply it. I'm gonna make a new layer just because I know that we have another ellipse here. edit this one. As you can see, this one points a different way than the other one. That's what I want here. I'll make it slightly bigger, not too much. Something like that. There we go. So now we're sort of where I want us to be. We can erase this part, we can erase this part, and this following our previous lines comes down there. There we go. Bring it over here. We go there, and then there's the window. Okay. And now we can do this. I think this is sort of like head protection. If the car would flip, then we would still have safety for the driver. And then we can come up here. And the air intake. Now this, again, one of my favorite parts here will be the, well, probably we wouldn't need to draw this in, but it's sort of like cross-hatching, creating these, what are they, fenders? I don't know what you would call them, but it's a bunch of lines. And I enjoy drawing a bunch of lines. Let me speed this up. Okay, so what we have to do here is keep this rounded. So I don't want to draw another line there because that's gonna sort of ruin the roundness. What I want to do is draw this section line a bit further back, and this sort of line will also help me, especially if you round it there. And we can do that again. You give it a roundness there, and you bring it back there. But I don't like how that looks. So I'm just gonna leave it out for now and try to finalize this here in the back. Let's take a look without the underline. Yeah. So this will need quite a bit more line work, I feel, just because we have a bunch of detail in the undersketch and a lot of that is being lost here. So I'm just gonna bring back some of these section lines here, just because I like how they're explaining the shape there a bit better. And then we have detail here that I don't really care about. This is, in this cases, I'm just trying to sort of suggest the seating that might be there. Let's see if I will forget or not about adding the mirrors there, because I have this, I won't call it obsession, but tendency of forgetting to add mirrors to cars. But now we're doing this interesting fender here, which sort of nicely wraps around there. And I just want to follow that. Okay, I feel like I could do the wheels now. So I am going to merge this down because I see I drew a lot on an extra layer. I try to keep as much on one layer as possible, just because, I mean, it's good to work on different layers, but it's easier for the app as well if I keep everything on one layer. Let's make this wheel a bit bigger, not too much. Try to adjust it in there. So I'm using on the inside or interior, I'm trying to use thinner lines because that also suggests level of detail. I don't want to make this bigger than that necessarily. So this should be relatively the same. There we go, and then let's see what I did here with the wheels. I feel like I'm gonna push it harder here than I let go. Okay, edit shape. So this is a bit tricky, and then I'm gonna do another one, just barely touching. The good thing with, of course, Procreate is that you can do these just barely touching sort of maneuvers, and you get a nice line thickness out of it. And let's see, this should be relatively flat, but you still, so here the curve, you come into a curve and then you keep it flat. What you can do here is, what I tend to do is I draw the wheel here, let it go here. I adjust it onto this, and I know that it will need to be a bit more open, just because of perspective, it opens up a bit more, and I bring it over here, and it becomes just a bit smaller. There we go, and I feel like we can open it a bit more as well. So that sort of feels good to me. Now I'm gonna erase. I'll always leave just a little bit, just a bit of that bite in there. Not all. Actually, I'm gonna come back with the dark there, so it will not matter in the end. But as I said, you want to leave some of those construction lines in there. And watch out not to switch too often to the eraser. Okay, let me see what we have here. Oh, it looks better. Okay, I'm gonna do the rest of the wheels now, and for that I am going to speed up the video because it's the same process all over again. Okay, and now that we have the wheels, we can sort of erase the parts that we know for sure that will be not visible from the rest of the car. And that's also why I like to draw the wheels on a separate layer, because this way we will not have an issue. And I think I forgot to draw that part in, so let me go down to my layer here below, and now we do this fender on this side that we already did on the other side. And just to be sure, another layer. As I said, I like drawing on these. You can call them safety layer because it's hard to mess up, and if you mess up, it's easy to fix. This is much rounder, and this is not. So you want to take a look at that, because I have this tendency sometimes of drawing in a vacuum, so I don't really look at the other side. And especially when you have things that are symmetrical like this, you should sort of keep them somewhat similar to each other. So looking at the other one that also had some sort of a nice already bend in it, like going along with a curvature of a wheel that doesn't really exist, but you can see it sort of goes in there. So I wanted to accentuate that a little bit. Let us continue adding some detail here. Again, new layer. I want to make sure that I can fix stuff if it gets broken. Now, usually when I do stuff like this, I do a lot of copy pasting. So I would draw this element here. Then actually this is bothering. I would draw it here, and I would just copy paste it from here to here. But for some reason, and maybe they changed it, but especially in the early Procreates, when you transform something, it becomes fuzzy or it becomes jaggedy, edgy. Either way, when you transform parts, they just don't end up as nice as you wish for them. And they do lose a little bit of contrast in programs like Photoshop as well. So I'm not saying that there's a perfect solution for it, but I feel like in Photoshop it loses much less of its contrast. So I can also just show you that quickly. So I would do this, then duplicate it, and you would bring it here, and then you would say, okay, I don't need this part here, so I erase this quickly, and then transform, free transform, push down on this one, and just try to push it into the shape that I need there. Like that, and maybe make it just a bit small. Technically it should be bigger, it should be smaller, right? But looks good there. And I'm going to say okay. As you can see, it became a bit more jaggedy. So here we had this nice continuation of the line, and now everything is jaggedy. Now if you're in a hurry, you can live with this as well. You just erase here and there and draw over it a little bit again, and that's what I'm going to do here, since I'm trying to speed up. But the problem here is also that this inner thing was supposed to run the other way, so something like that. And actually, this doesn't need to run that way at all, because we can't really see in there from this ref and also the ref that I have open. But because that's how I drew on the other side, I want to make sure that here it's the same. So I'm gonna erase a bit and just draw it back. So you want to make sure that it's not extra work that you're putting into it, because then you didn't really save any time, right? If you copy it over here and then you spend a bunch of time fixing it up. I can merge it down, bring our lines back. So another thing that is also me, so this method might be completely viable for you, but this is again my problem of trying to make things a bit too, how should I call it? Strict? Not strict, but the lines, I just want them to be too crispy. And sometimes it's not necessary, because you don't really see that it's so small. So that is a bit on me. I know that there is an extra line here running that way. And then that same one is here as well. And then we have a little bit of something there. We don't need to detail that out. Can come down here now, make sure to erase around there. And I can erase parts of the wheel now that are in the way. Here's some detail work that looks quite different on the reference image, but I don't really care about doing all that work now. So we're just gonna imply some detail here, and the rest we can almost fill with, oh, different layer. So what I do when I'm on a different layer and I quickly want to fill with black, I just make sure to draw in the shape where I want it to fill with black. There you go, like that. Yeah, it happens quite often that we forget that we are on a different layer, and then we're trying to do something and it's just not going to work out for us. But it's not a problem, because there's, as you can see, there's a quick solution for everything. Same on this side. So we have, there should be the axis. Let me just draw that quickly here. So I'll bring it down there. Well, actually, no. Let me edit the shape. So I guess this is like the axis. So I'll bring it here and then there should be a line there. And then you just draw some detailing. Make sure to make this a bit darker. And that way we can hide our ignorance of what actually is happening there. Because I am extremely ignorant on my part. I have no idea how to do this. Okay, and then we can erase again, just as before, everything that we don't need. In this case, that. This could do with a little bit of more ambiguity. So let me bring more darks in there. Okay, that's pretty fine for that. We can do the wing and the back part now, and then we'll come back and do all the details. First, merge this down. Before I merge this, I want to check, yeah, everything fine. Merge down, and then for the wing part. Now here, okay, so we had another technical snafu here, so I quickly wanted to fix that up. As you can see, the wing, the back wing here was way too long on that side. So what you have to make sure, if you're working in perspective, in this case we have this T shape here. So this is like a shape like that, and on this one we had the wing, right? You have to make sure that this side here, this length, let's call it A, is a little bit smaller on this side. So this would be A minus X. I will call it. So just a little bit smaller than this one, not too long. And in this case, this part was actually longer than this part, and that makes no sense. And stuff like that happens when you're in the heat of drawing, and I just wanted to fix that quickly. And what you can see here is what I did as well. I can go on this layer already. And here I sort of drew this line. And this goes over here as well, and it becomes sort of invisible because it flows into the side. And then here it comes around. I'll make sure to rotate it nicely in there, bring it a little bit lower so it continues out of here. And this is sort of a line that, well, it helps. It is in the design of the car, but it helps me very much in explaining the shape that I'm drawing here. So I'll bring this a bit back and this a bit down. So it can be sometimes a bit of a struggle finding the correct line, but it's worth. Definitely not a quadrilateral. Also not polyline. What happened there? So yeah, technology sometimes does its own thing, and then you have to bend it to your will and tell technology that it's wrong. Now for the infamous red part, the mistakes that I made here. As you can see, most of the straight lines that I use the Procreate trick for are in the front and the back wing. I did use the curves here and there, and I used ellipses, of course, for the wheels just to make them nicer. But the rest is a whole bunch of just making sure that I do nice long hand-drawn lines. So that's what you have to or should do as well. And I'm still not in the clear how crisp or uncrisp this drawing at the end is going to be, and also stiff, because stiff is also something that happens. Yes, it did. Now this looks much better than hanging out there. You can really see that that was a big mistake. And it looks like we have the main things. Let's not forget the mirrors. So a new layer for those. And with that, we do have the mirrors as well. Merge down. And now we can see what detail I am missing. And now also the illustrative part can come in, where it depends on how illustrative you want to go. You can push some dirt on it. You can add some imperfections. And that's what I really like, drawing all the imperfections in cars. Well, not in cars, but in general, just adding some dirt here or there. What I see is definitely we want to do our wheels. So I'm just going to make a new layer, and I'm just going to bring in some of this dark from the ground. And for this, we can also speed up the video a bit, because you guys know how this works. Okay, so cross-hatching wise, I always put the light source here because I'm right-handed, and I think most right-handed people do this. It's not a law, it's not something that needs to happen, but it's just something I noticed that I do and that other people do as well. So there is no other rules or laws to it. I just like to do that. So now if we take this away, something that we could do is we duplicate this layer, we put the opacity to full, and what I'm gonna do is uniform, scale it down, bring it over here, and let's see where I could still add detail. For example, we could bring back the cutting lines here. So I'm gonna merge this down now, new layer. So we have cutting lines there. Erase what's not necessary. And as you can see, I didn't want to draw here or here to match it because you can easily mess it up. Just draw a big long line and then you can adjust as necessary. We can do a cutting line here as well. Try to keep in perspective with that line. So that one seems nice. And I'm going to round it down here because I want this to be a rounding, right? Something like that. And I'm just going to erase the rest. Here we don't need a rounding. Well, you could add if you really want to. We could do that, and that also implies a little bit. Let's why not? Let's do that here as well. Even though here we have a little doubling of the line, so that implies a little bit of rounding to that shape as well. So that's already nice. Brings in a little bit of detail. Here we need some thickness. So we can do what we did last time as well. As you can see, we have a thicker line there, and I am on a different layer, and I'm going to make all my lines that are at least close to the ground a little bit thicker, not the wheel there, but this here. This can be a bit thicker, just to bring it to the same thickness as that one. And I could make the front wing just a little bit thicker as well. Speaking of, I could also add some cross-hatching there. Something that I see that I totally forgot to do is this part of the wheel, which is actually, there's not much to do there, as we can see here as well. But there are a couple of extra ellipses in there that would be nice if we have it. So let me go back to this extra layer that I have here and just bring in another ellipse. And in my previous sketch, I added these lines here. So I'm going to add another layer, and I'm going to merge all of these together so it's all okay. These lines, they should definitely be in perspective, so they should be parallel with my wheels lines. And then we can bring some of these in here like this. If you have this sort of dark versus white, this gives you sort of a feeling for a chromatic cover of your surface. At least that's what I'm going for. And it's sort of working. So this needs something here, and I'm just gonna suggest like whenever you see these double lines, that means usually a shift in direction. It's not always the most self-explanatory, but most of the time it works. At least I hope it does. Especially if I come back here and I make like this sort of thing. That was incorrect. So I followed that line. That seems to work. I'm just gonna move it a little bit to there. I think this is it. You can come back here now. Talking about thickening up lines, you can thicken this here a little bit, just because it is the bottom side of our wing. But I will say thank you very much for joining this video. I know this is a little bit slower. It's I warned you. You guys wanted to see a real life drawing. It is getting a little bit slower, but as you can see, we went from this to this really. This looks, as I said, it still looks a little bit too stiff. A lot of the energy is out, but that's what we would want to bring back with the color as well. And I will probably spend some more time here and there just finding little things like, oh, I can bring some detail here and I can bring some detail there. But I am definitely not going to record that because it makes no sense to waste your time on that, because it's not something that you get a lot out of in the end. So thank you very much for joining. I do hope you learned something from how to get clean line work, because you guys ask me often about how I get my clean line work. So this is how I do it. It just takes some time and patience. And with that, this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something, as I said. And yeah, as always, the most important part is that you folks have a great time, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.